Hello, everyone. Hello again. We are ready to start. As you heard, this webinar is being recorded so that we can make the transcript and slides available online for those of folks who couldn't make it today, and of course, so you can review it again in the future. We also do have a chat box if you don't want to be recorded but still want to participate. So this webinar is on submitting your performance measures data into the new online system called oahpmdata.net. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Imogene Fua and I will be your moderator. I am part of the OPA data support team, which provides technical assistance to the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program grantees. We are here to help you in collecting and submitting your required performance measures data to OPA. So in this webinar, we will go over a review of some terms and some tools to help you with your data collection, and then we'll also do a demo of the new system where you can learn how to enter your data. We'll also give you the opportunity to ask questions throughout the webinar. Tara Rice from OPA will give you a welcome introduction, and then Zach Eckstein, who's also from Data Support Team, will also give the rest of the presentation. But before I hand off the webinar to the presenters, I just want to go over some logistics. By default, all participants are muted, but you can also help me out by muting yourself. And for those of you who chose to be in listen mode only when you logged in, we can take your questions via chat box that's located at the middle right of your screen. We also do want to hear from you during the Q&A session. So for those of you who called in via your phone, you can click on the hand raise button at the top of your screen, and I can unmute you at an appropriate time. And of course, you also have the option to use the chat box. You are welcome to enter questions in the chat box at any time. So if you have a question and you don't want to forget it, type it in and we can save it for an appropriate time. I'd also like to take note that below the chat box is a file download that you may be interested in. That's the OAHPM data manual that you will you can download. It basically has the main elements that we'll go over today. So click on it and download it at any time, actually, during the webinar. It's also going to be available on the oahpmdata.net website, and Zach will show you where that will be later on. And then lastly, the presentation slides and transcript, as I mentioned, will be available on the max.gov website. Please do give us a week or so after today to get those materials prepared for online viewing. Okay, so next slide. So this is our agenda for today. We'll first give you an overview and background of the submission requirements for your performance measures, and then review some terms. We'll go over some data collection tools to help you in your data collection efforts, and then we'll give you that live demo of the online system and show you how to enter your data. Then we'll take the last few minutes of the webinar to take any final questions. So now I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Tara Rice, from the Office of Population Affairs. So Tara?
Thank you, Imogene. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our TPP 2020 grantees and their partners and other federal staff to the overview webinar for the TPP 2020 performance measures. I'm Tara Rice with the OPA Division of Research and Evaluation, and I'm the lead for performance measures for the Office for TPP grants. So today, we're going to be providing you with an introduction to the OAH Performance Measures Data.net site, which provides online data entry. The benefits of having an online database are that it allows grantees to report all their data centrally. The system has validations to ensure that your data are actually reported correctly, and it also allows OPA to monitor the data across projects in one central location. So it's very convenient for all of us. It's also convenient for you as a grantee user because you can view data from your organization. And if you set yourself up as a grantee administrator, which we'll talk about later, you can set your account up so that you can see all of the partnering organizations across your entire grant project, which is a plus for your continuous quality or CQI efforts, particularly if you have a lot of associated partners who are entering their own data, which could be the case for some of the Tier 1 grantees. So today, we have all three of the TPP 20 grantee tier cohorts present on this webinar. So that includes the Tier 1 grantees, the Tier 2 Impact and Innovation Network, or INN grantees, and the Tier 2 Phase 2 Rigorous Evaluation grantees. Each grantee group may find their measures, their performance measures, available to them on the max.gov page under the Resources tab. For the most part, the performance measures are the same for all of the TPP tiers and cohorts. However, there are some differences. So in particular, for those of you who are in the Tier 2 Innovation and Impact Network group, we have not talked to you about reporting program or section level data yet because you're doing more programming with your innovators and your networks. So I bring this up to say that everything that we're going to be talking about today is globally like everything that grantees might need to report on, but there are going to be some differences for a particular cohort, particularly for Tier 2 Innovation Network that we're not expecting you to report on section data right now this year. And so if you ever feel like you're looking and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, and you have a question, just remember you can always just put a question in the chat about that. Next slide, please. So we're going to be talking about the measures in a very high-level manner today. And I also just want to say that if you have any questions about the measures, we can answer those as well. And if we're unable to get to all of those questions today, we can follow up with you later if you enter them into the chat. So we're also going to be talking about how to pick users and what levels of access users can have in this system. So basically, there's two different levels of user accounts. And in the future part of the presentation, there'll be more detail about this. But I'm just going to provide you with a high-level overview now, which is to say that you can either set up as a grantee administrator or an implementing organization account. Grantee administrators should include the project director and anyone the project director designates who needs to report data across the project. So for example, if you have an evaluator who is reporting your performance measures data on behalf of your project, you should set them up probably as a grantee administrator. The grantee administrator role is important because you can ensure that you can look at reports, which we'll talk about at the end, and see that everyone's actually completed their data entry. We highly recommend that everyone have at least 2 grantee administrators per grant. That way you have a backup user in case somebody is out of the office during a reporting period deadline. There's also implementing organization accounts. And so this is anyone who needs to be able to report program level data on a effective program for Tier 1 or an innovative, promising intervention for Tier 2, the reach, demographics, etc. Again, this is like what we said the Tier 1 Innovation Network grantees are not going to be reporting this year. But in those instances, if you have partners, particularly if you're a Tier 1 grantee, you have a lot of partners and they're implementing programs, you might want to have some of your partners report their data directly, in which case you could set them up as an implementing organization account. And here's the reporting schedule the reporting schedule, your grant years typically run from July 1st through June 30th of each year. The exception to that is for the Tier 2 grantees, the Innovation Network, and Tier 2 Phase 2 grants began on July 15th, 2020. So this year, Tier 2 grants basically have a 15 or so day shorter reporting period than they will in subsequent years. So we talk about the reporting periods, and we break them up into 2 half-year semi-annual reports. The first 6-month period runs from July through December, and you have a submission deadline of January 31st. The second period runs from January to June, and the submission deadline there is July 30th. Now, the deadlines are when your semi-annual progress reports are due, and the deadlines are also when OPA staff are going to be looking to see, did you report data. We highly encourage you to report your data on a continuous basis as you complete your programming all along, and we'll talk about that in the future as well. But the 2 reporting periods are basically when we're going to be checking to say, do you have data in the system? So you'll definitely want to make sure that you're aware and that your partners are aware of those reporting deadlines. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Zach Eckstein.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to just take a moment to review or introduce what the different levels of performance measures are, so we know what data we're talking about. And the data are reported at 2 different levels. Some of the data is your grantee level data, things like your fidelity process monitoring, training, partners, stakeholder engagement, and dissemination. And again, note that some of these are different, such as for development stages only need to be reported for a Tier 2 IIN network grantee. And the important part to know here is that the website will only show you the pages that you actually do need to complete. So if you're not a Tier 2 network grantee, then you won't even see the entry space for development stages. On the other side, we have the organization level data. So this is level that's attached to the implementing organization for your program. So this includes section data, which is the implemented program, so classes, and we'll talk about exactly what the definition of a section is in just a moment. It includes things like its location, reach and demographics, dosage, and fidelity and quality for the programming. And again, for Tier 1 grantees now, they also will be submitting supportive services data attached to specific organizations, and only Tier 1 grantees will need to be submitting supportive services data, and so only they will see the button to lead them to the area to do so. Before we take a look at the website, I just want to make sure we review a few terms so we know what we're talking about specifically. So when we talk about the term section, this is a group of participants who receive and complete the TPP program model, either the effective program for Tier 1 grantees or the promising intervention for Tier 2 grantees together. So for example, it might be Ms. Smith's fourth period health class at a high school, or youth in a specific after-school program, or youth in a group home. They meet several times to attend this particular program. We recommend that you give each section a unique name that helps you identify the section for future reference. Within each section, you may have 1 or more sessions. So a session is a meeting of that section of participants. So the example, when the health class meets on a given day, January 15th, that would count as 1 session of Mrs. Smith's 4th period health class. For sessions, you report the number that you plan to implement, the number you actually completed, and then the number that you observed for fidelity and quality. All that data gets attached here. And then finally, even smaller, within each session or class period, it's broken down into activities. So these are items that are implemented during a given session and are described probably in your program's interventions fidelity monitoring tool. So these would be things like role plays, group discussions, interactive games, a short video. Each one of those might be an activity, depending on how it's defined for your program that you're implementing. With activities, you're reporting the observed adherence, which is the number of activities that you had planned and the number of activities that you actually completed. If you observe more than one session in a section for these things, then you're going to report the average across those for the entire section. All right. So we have some tools and templates in order to assist you in collecting this data. The first two are the Fidelity Process Form and the Program Observation Form. So I'll give you a quick look at those now. The Fidelity Process Form looks a bit like this, and it has questions that pertain to your fidelity process in terms of orientation and training, and your ongoing fidelity management. The instructions at the top instruct you how to score it, and then you'll report your score as part of your grantee data. The Program Observation Form also has instructions at the top and asks you to assess the different aspects of the session that you are observing. At the end, the final question, number 7, asks you to rate the overall quality of the program session, taking into account all of your scores on the preceding items. This number is the number that you'll actually report for the overall quality of the section. If you observe more than one session, you provide the average. All right. So those two tools combined together with our section data tracker are what will help you gather all the information that you'll need in order to be ready to submit your data. So our section data tool is this Excel form here with an instruction sheet or directions in the front. And it provides almost an attendance list function for your sections. So each section data tool should be assigned to one section. You will be identifying your participants however you like. You can change the participant ID column. You'll select the type of participant, whether they're a youth participant, an adult caregiver, or a youth serving professional, and fill in the rest of their demographic information using the drop-downs. On the right here, these gray columns are blocked and not editable because they contain formulas that auto-calculate attendance scores. So here under session 1, if I'm recording attendance for the first 3 participants that attended my program, the first 2 were there, and then I'll select 0 to show an absence. And if I keep going, you'll see that the attendance percent automatically updates for each participant as you continue to mark their attendance for sessions. We also have a tab in order to help you track any non-youth participants that participate in supplemental activities to your program. So here's where you'll record those. You'll indicate which type it is, and then it'll go ahead and add to the count on the right. Finally, you can record your observations for this section on the Observations tab. We recommend that you note the observation date, and then you give the session number from your attendance list. So for example, if you serve session 3, on the Observations tab, we'll go ahead and name session 3 here. This column is where you'll provide that quality score from question number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And then again, you'll provide the number of activities planned and the number of activities actually completed, which will give you your session adherence percentage. So as you go through your section and you're taking your attendance and recording your observations, once you're completed and the section is closed and you're ready to submit your data, all the data you need to report is found on the 3 following sheets that are highlighted in green. So first comes the REACH data, where it will give you all the totals by gender, age, grade, and race ethnicity. Next, your dosage information, which will give you your average attendance percentage, as well as the number of participants that got at least 75% dosage. And finally, the Fidelity tab will go ahead and provide you with the number of classes that were observed and your average observed adherence, as well as your average overall quality. And these will be the numbers that you'll report into the website. I recommend when you save the tool, you make sure to name it the same as the section that it's intended for. That way you know the data stays together. I have a quick question here that asks me to show the drop-down for race ethnicity, so I can pull that up if there was a more specific question about that before I continue. This provides the options that are the only options that are available. This is a suggested tool, so you don't have to use this exact format, but it does do the calculations for averages and attendance for you. So if you don't use this tool, you want to make sure that you have those correctly calculated when you go to enter them into the website. So I believe that answers the other question as well. This is just a suggested template that you can use because it does all the information for you, but you're welcome to use it however you like. So the last question here that I'll answer before we're I'll answer these two questions here. So all of these templates and tools will be available in the resources section of the website, which I'll demonstrate to you in just a moment. So you'll be able to download those, the latest version, straight from the website whenever you do need them. And when you're actually reporting the data, you're reporting only the completed section, not each individual session, but you'll need to track each session for attendance and then report the totals. So I believe I've answered all those questions that we had for now. So we'll go ahead and continue on. And if you have a question about those pieces as we continue, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll make sure to address it before we go. All right. So we'll take a moment to talk about the website. So when you get your account first set up, which will occur after this webinar, you'll receive an email with a link to log in and create a password for your account. You'll be responsible, grantee administrators, for creating and maintaining your organization user accounts. So these are your users who will be entering your section level data. And you'll also be responsible for maintaining and updating your grantees list of program models, either the effective program or the promising intervention, depending on your tier, and your implementing organizations. So your partner organizations that are actually implementing the program, even if it's your grantee acting and implementing the program, you'll need to set that up as an organization in order to enter the section data for it. And I'll show you that on the demo. All right, so again, on their initial setup, grantee administrators will go to the grantees page and they're going to set up their primary contact info for that grantee. So if it's not them, the user, or even if it is, we want to make sure you provide that information. You'll make sure to select which program models your grantee uses, and then add the organizations that your grantee works with that implement your programming. For each of those organizations, you'll have to also indicate which program model they're running. And that comes directly from the list of program models that you said your grantee has available. And then finally, you'll be able to assign or create users for each of those organizations. You can assign yourself as a user, so you can enter section data. And if you create a user, that person will receive an email and be able to log into their account, and they will be able to enter section data for that organization only. You can add them to other organizations, but those users will not be able to access grantee level data or any other organizations that they aren't associated with. So it's a nice way, if you're working with partner organizations, to give them access and let them enter their section data without them being able to screw with any of the other data that might be submitted. A final note here, and I'll show you this on the demo, you must assign your account to an implementing organization in order to access and view or edit their data. So even if you're a grantee administrator, you still have to add yourself to the users list for that organization in order to view their section data. And again, I'll show you that during the demo. All right. So we'll do a quick demo of those steps I just walked through that you'll want to set up for initial setup. I see some more questions about section level data, and we're going to cover that after we finish the grantee level data. So hopefully I can answer your questions there. So here's our first look at the oahpmdata.net website. It gives a standard warning that this is a government system. And here's where you can log in. If you ever forget your password or get locked out, lockouts only last 15 minutes. But if you forgot your password, you can always click the Forgot Password link, and that will let you enter your email and address and receive a new email to log in. The same thing goes for your initial logins. When you receive your first email, the link will only work for 24 hours. So if you miss that window, all you'll need to do is just use the Forgot Password link instead. All right, so we'll go ahead and log in as my user account. This is my example account, and I'm logging into a test version of the website where we have some dummy data. So if you see anything that looks a bit odd, that's because we're doing testing on this website as well. As you can see here, the announcements are all very basic, just welcomes. All right, so we'll start on the grantee screen and get set up as a grantee administrator. So here with my user account, I'm a grantee administrator for this example grantee. And the first thing I'm going to do is click the Edit button to view my grantee info and make sure my primary contact information is correct. If it's empty, you'll want to make sure to fill that information in so we have that on file. Back on the Manage Grantees page, which you can reach anytime by clicking the Grantees link in the navigation bar, we'll go ahead and check out what program models we have. And here we can see Education Station is already associated, but if we need to add another one, we'll click the Add Program Model button, select it from the dropdown, and click Save. The options available in your dropdown will vary by tier, so you'll only be able to see the options that you should be using, although of course only select the options that you actually are using. Then finally, to complete our setup, we'll go to the Organizations page. And we can see here we already have one organization set up. But we'll go ahead and create another one for the demonstration. We'll call it New Org. And we'll just pick me as the primary contact. As you can see, we now have our new organization listed here. As I said before, we'll want to make sure that we still assign program models to our organizations. So I'll add Teen Talk to this organization as well, since it's now available. And then I'm going to go to the users page. Here we can see there are currently no users, so I'm going to go ahead and add myself as a user. If you need to add another user, what you can do is click the Add User button and enter their email address. If their account already exists in the system, they will automatically be added to the list. If their account does not already exist in the system, then you'll need to provide a little bit of additional information, such as their first name, last name, phone number, and then the account will be created for them, and they will receive a new account email. You may want to contact this person as well, just to let them know to look out for that email, since the link in it will only be good for 24 hours. But again, if the link does expire, they can use the Forgot Password link to have a new email sent so they can access their account. Quick question. People that have two different grants, Before we move on, what I can show you is that on our grantees page, you will simply see both grants listed here separately. All right. Are there any questions about that before we continue? So entering demographic data independent of attendance. So the first column is just an ID column. So you're welcome to use whatever system you like to line up, de-identified IDs with the people that are actually attending your class. If you have the final data sheet, however, you are able to come up with the final data that you need to report for section data, then that works. You'll never be reporting participant level data, only the section level, not session. So hopefully that addresses this question here. Okay. Yes, so if you're working with multiple partners, you'll want to create each one as a different implementing organization. And one thing that I forgot to mention is that you'll need to create an implementing organization for yourself, for your own grantee. And usually what we do is it's the name of the grantee, and then parentheses, self as IO, or just something to indicate that this is the implementing organization. All right. So now we'll go ahead and move forward and talk about the grantee data. So this is the grantee level data. We have fidelity, training, partners, stakeholder engagement, and dissemination. Again, development stages is only required from the Tier 2 IINs. And on each data submission page, we have specific data validations to make sure that all required data is entered and that all data entered is within allowed value ranges. So for example, for a quality score shouldn't be more than 5. So it'll stop you if you try to enter that. There are differences of, like I said, between the tiers. So Tier 1 and Tier 2 Phase 2 will have these particular tabs for fidelity, training partners, engagement, and dissemination. While the Tier 2 network grantees will have training partners, engagement, dissemination, and development stages. So just slight differences there. So we'll go ahead and just take a look at what the grantee data page looks like for a Tier 1 grantee. Here you can see it's the same tabs we just showed. You select your reporting period at the top, and then you can go ahead and start filling in scores. So we'll just go ahead and add some information now. All right, and then we'll go ahead and click Save. And we'll see that we have an error. So here it's letting us know the total score must be between 0 and 26. And you'll see right here, it gives us this nice little red warning that lets us know where the issue is. You'll want to select the tabs and you'll be able to see where the warning is placed. So now that we've made our correction, we can click Save. It'll go ahead and return us to this screen here and let us know our grantee data has been saved. All right. So that's it for the grantee data. Like I said, the Tier 2 IINs will look slightly different in terms of which tabs and the specific question, but you'll be able to review those performance measures for your cohorts. All right, are there any questions about grantee data before we continue? All right, well, we'll go ahead and move forward, but if I do see a question, then we can certainly make sure we get to that before the end. So here, we'll go ahead and start talking about section data. So in order to submit your section data, you'll need to make sure that we did the setup steps that I talked about in initial setup for grantee administrators. Grantee administrators must set up the organizations and program models and users before you're able to enter section data. Once those are set up, you'll be able to create a section by choosing a reporting period and program model, giving it a name, and then labeling it with the state setting and urbanicity. You'll have tabs to enter data, such as reach, dosage, and fidelity and quality. And again, there are data validations that make sure you've entered all required data and only allowed value ranges. The tier 1s will be submitting supportive services data. Again, you just select a reporting period, enter the data, and there are validations to make sure that all the data is entered. So don't leave it blank. You can add a 0 if it's 0. But the important part here again is that only the tier 1s will see this button in order to submit supportive services. And I'll show you that on the demo. So here you can see, and I'll show you this on the website in just a moment, this is what our implementing organization looks like, listed here with our 2 organizations, and then you can go in to edit sections or enter your supportive services data. Again, for my tier 2s, you won't see the supportive services data button. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at our section level data or organization level data, and we'll click on the organizations button and link in the nav bar. Here we'll select our grantee. So again, if you have more than one, you'll have more than one selection. And we can see here we have one organization listed, Helping the Helpers. We know we have 2 organizations because we just created one while we were on this demo, but we can't see the other one because we have not added ourselves as a user for that organization. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Grantees, and then Organizations, and add myself as a user to this organization here. Now that I've added myself as a user, we'll head back to the Organizations page, and we can see here that it is now listed. So if you ever are on this page and you don't see an organization you expect, make sure that you're listed as a user for that organization. I'll show you the supportive services briefly first. Here you can select your reporting period and then enter your data and click Save or Back. That is all for the supportive services data. And then finally, when we go in to create section data, we'll click on Sections. We'll select our reporting period and program model. And we can see here that we already have one section created, but we'll go ahead and make another one. Call this New Section. We'll pick our state setting and urbanicity. And then we can see our new section has been added to the bottom of the list. To enter the section data, we'll hit Enter Section Data, Edit Section Data, and we can see our tabs at the top, Reach, Dosage, and Fidelity and Quality. On the section data page, what we'll do is we'll give a total youth reach. And the important part about total youth reach is that when you do reach by gender and race, ethnicity, grade, and age, the totals for those will need to match your total youth reach. So the auto-calculating box here has to match your total youth reach. So I'm just going to enter some dummy data for each of these. This one is our non-youth program participants, so either caregivers or youth-serving professionals. And then below that is the section to enter the supplemental activity participants, which are between caregivers and youth serving professionals. So please take note that this first set includes non-youth participants for your total. Sorry. Ensure we enter our data. We'll go to the dosage page next, and here's where we're going to enter our average attendance. And then the number of participants that received at least 75% of the programming. That's going to be a whole number, not a percentage. Finally, on the Fidelity and Quality tab, what we're going to do is enter the number of sessions planned, the number of sessions that were completed, and the number that were observed. We'll give the reported fidelity, which is adherence. So this is the number of activities completed over the number of activities planned. So this one is reported as a percentage. Again, if you use our section data tracker, it'll automatically calculate that percentage for you on the reporting sheets. Otherwise, you'll want to make sure that you calculate that average. Lastly, we have the observer reported quality. So we'll go ahead and enter that and then click Save. We see we have an error here, so we'll go ahead and check that error. We know it's on reach by grade. So we'll take a look, and we can see here that 105, this 5 is too many. So we'll make sure that this is correct, not just fix it to work, but that it matches the correct data. And then we'll click Save, and we'll see that our section data has been successfully saved. If you need to edit it, you can do so until the reporting period closes, and then you'll be unable to edit the section data further. If you need to make more changes, you'll want to contact your project officer, and then they will let us know to enable you to make those updates if needed. You do need to submit section level data. Unless there's a special exception for your program, you should be submitting the data at the section level. So, yes. Let's see. Are there any other questions before we continue? Answer from is that you can define your section as a site if you wish and aggregate everything for that site into one section if everything else matches up. All right. So we'll go ahead and continue. So I'm just going to briefly review some of the website features. This hopefully will answer some of the questions you may have about where to get the resources that you need. So we have the resources section, which contains the user guide, which will walk you through step by step of all the processes that we talked about today. We also have a set of video tutorials that are short recordings of the demonstrations of actually the various pieces of some of this. So we'll see which ones are up on the website currently. And then you have access to your user profile, of course, to change your password, update your multi-factor authentication option, which is going to be something like a telephone number, so you can receive that secondary access code when you log in. And you can change your contact info to make sure it's up to date. All right. So we'll go ahead and take a moment to look at these. We have our resources folder here, user guide and tools. And you can see here that we have the 3 tools we talked about earlier, as well as the user guide for download. If we head over to the tutorial section, select a tutorial folder, we'll see that the only video we have up on the demo site here, or the test website, is how to enter and save section data. But if you click that, what it'll allow you to do is open a player and just go ahead and stream it like a YouTube video. So you can watch the demonstration of how to enter and save section data on the website. As was mentioned earlier, we also have some reports so you can view kind of an overview of your data. Some of our reports, like the PM summary report for grantee level, will give you all of the grantee data that you submit on a very nice long table, because there's a lot of it. But if you're looking for things like a dosage report, for a report about dosage across all the sections for your grantee, or for a particular program model, you can select by program model, narrow it down by grantee if you have more than one, and so on. It'll give you the numbers for the various metrics, and you can, if you're interested, you can export the report to Excel. And our reports also have features such as grouping, which allows you to drag column names. So you're welcome to try out all of these features on the reports. You can poke around with them as much as you like, and see which reports work best for you and fit your needs. If you have any questions about how the reports work or what data you're getting, you could always feel free to contact the support desk, and we'd be happy to help you out with that. Finally, over here under your profile name and email address, you'll be able to access your profile or the log off function. And here's where you change your password, update your authentication number, and your contact info. All right. So again, a few things. You can always call us on our support line and leave us a message, or send us an email at support@oahpmdata.net. And I want to remind everyone once more time about the user guide, because it does provide step-by-step instructions for everything that we reviewed today, along with screenshots. So if the first time you're logging in, you want to get set up as a grantee administrator and make sure you remember all the steps, the user guide is a great follow-along companion to use for that. All right. So we'll go ahead and take any questions. In response to where can we find fidelity reports for specific facilitators, the facilitator is not collected as part of our data collection, so you'll be unable to do that through our website.
Hi, everyone. Just to add on to that, if you're talking about fidelity reports, are you talking about the reports themselves or actually for entering fidelity adherence? Because if it's reports themselves, then that's the answer that Zach just gave. But if it's how you actually enter adherence, just want to remind you that that should come from your developers' fidelity logs or tools. Just wasn't quite sure what the question was asking for.
All right, excellent. All right, so our next question is, if we have multiple partner organizations, but they are not responsible for implementation, will we just list them with ourselves as the user? So if you have partners, but they're not implementing anything, then you don't need to add them as an organization. You provide the number of partners that you have as part of your grantee data, but if they're not implementing programming, or if they are not referring for supportive services, then you don't need to have them listed on the website, since there's no data to report in terms of what the website is collecting. Another one here is it possible to download the report data as an Excel or CSV file? Yes, each of these reports up here at the top. So for example, I'll take a look at the one that deals with section data, which is done by program model. You're able to export that to Excel and download that spreadsheet.
Just a reminder that if you did call in via phone, you can raise your hand using the icon on top of your screen. And especially if your question is complex, it might be better to just talk versus chat.
One question that we have here is, if we provide an educational series to parents as part of supplemental programming, should it be recorded as a section? So I guess my question would be, is it supplemental to another section? Because if it's supplemental programming for another section, then you would record them in that supplemental activities participants, the non-youth. If it's standalone, you want to confirm with your project officer, but it sounds like that's a section in itself. So you would record that as a section, and then you would record them as non-youth participants instead of just as, so you would put them non-youth program participants instead of as just non-youths who attended a supplemental activity.
And I would just like to add on to this, Zach, for Kate's question. Are you a Tier 1 or a Tier 2? Because if this program, if you're Tier 1, I would say, is this your effective program that you submitted evidence for? And if it is, then that's what you report sections on. But if it's not one of your effective programs that you applied to formally to do as a Tier 1 grantee, then it should fall in under supplemental activities. Okay, yeah, so you've answered that question. So if it's not your effective program, then you report it as supplemental activity.
So a question here is, which parts of the online database are relevant for Innovation Network grantees? Currently, if you're not implementing programming, then you don't have to worry about the organizations button, but you will still want to submit grantee data on the Manage Grantees page. That will still be important.
And I'm also going to add on to that in addition to the Tier 2 Innovation Network grantees, because this first reporting period overlaps with the planning and piloting period for Tier 1 grantees, and also for considering like COVID-19 and social distancing, some of you might not have implemented programs during the first 6 months, so you might not be ready to report organizational level data this time around, but you may still have some grantee level data, such as partnerships and training to report to us. So we do understand that this first 6-month reporting period will probably be a smaller reporting than what we would see subsequently. And so to add on to that, I think Emily's asking, if you don't have programming to report, should you enter all zeros or just not enter anything? And I think the answer to that is that if you don't have anything, don't report anything. Back, are there specific ones? I'm trying to remember across the different cohorts. Are there specific, is there anything specific that needs a 0 for this reporting period? But I would just add on that if you didn't do anything during this first 6 months, make sure that your project officer is aware of that, because we're always trying to figure out like who we're expecting to get data from and who we don't have data, who we're not going to have data from. So just make sure that it's clear so that people aren't bugging you about data that, was appropriately not going to be reported.
Yeah, so the best answer here is that you want to make sure you're still addressing your grantee level data each submission period, but if you don't implement programming or aren't reporting that programming for whichever reason, then you don't need to create a section to tell us that there's nothing in that section, if that makes sense. All right. So we have a question here that's how do you get your initial password? And so for this, I have a contact list that I will be going through in order to create the initial grantee administrator accounts. If your grantee does not get one, then please contact your project officer or the support team, both, and we'll make sure that you do get one. Once you do have one, a grantee administrator, what we like is that if you're a grantee administrator, we'll go ahead and submit the names and contact information for each of the counts they need created for the rest of their organization for other grantee administrators. Of course, if you just want to create people who can enter section data but aren't able to enter grantee data, you can do that through the organizations and users list. So here you can add users that only have access to enter section data for the organizations they're listed for. They will not have access to the grantees link in their navigation bar. So in order to get new grantee administrator accounts active, you'll just need to have the current project director for your grantee or whoever that may be with an account, and then just make sure the PO sends through their approval as well, and I'll create the accounts for you. You're welcome to enter. So this is a question. If you have implementing partners and users that are in the system, is it the expectation they be entering their own data, or can we enter it for them? Some operations, they have a central data person where someone sends them all of the section data trackers and they enter it all themselves. Other organizations may choose to have those people maintaining the attendance lists be the ones with accounts to enter the section data to kind of spread out the work. So you're able to do that either way, whichever works best for your particular organization grantee.
And I'd just like to add on to what Zach said, that earlier in the presentation, we mentioned that when you set up your implementation organization accounts, you can add someone from one of the grantee administrators as a user for any and all of your implementing organizations. So if you do that, then that way you can have someone central report the data for each partner site.
And to confirm again, I'm going to be sending out those grantee admin emails later this afternoon and into tomorrow morning. The link contained with, so please make sure you check your spam and junk folders tomorrow. If you don't receive it, the link in the email is only active for 24 hours. So if that passes, that's okay. All you need to do is go to the login page of the OAHPMdata.net website, click Forgot Password, and enter your email address. If you click Reset Your Password, it'll send you a new email with an active link. So even if you miss that initial email, you'll still be able to use the Reset Password function to access the website. And again, if you have any problems, please feel free to contact the support team, and we'd be happy to provide you with assistance. Another question here, where can we find the data collection tools and templates? These are available in the resources section of the website, accessible via the navigation bar. So that'll be right here. You click the resources link. And there's only one folder currently that contains the user guide and all three of the tools. So you'll be able to download those files directly from the website. We have a question is, how do we know who our PO identified for those emails? I do not know.
So it should be the project directors who are identified in MAX who will be getting those emails. So if there's someone else, such as an evaluator, who needs to have access, we're asking that you that we start with the project directors, and then like, is it better to like have them contact you the support desk email directly to get an account for someone like an evaluator?
Yes. What we'd prefer is if you email us with the information and CC your federal project officer. That way they can just give us the thumbs up, and then we'd be happy to add those other accounts. It also works out very easily is if you add them as an organization user to one of the organizations, then I can upgrade their account with the PO's approval. So either one of those, either email all the information to me and CC your project officer, or add them to an organization and then email your project officer. Just, you're going to put this person from organization user to grantee admin. The video demos are available under the tutorials section of the navigation bar. Currently, we only have the one folder for section data. We have another video that's going to be coming up on the website soon. But for now, this is what's available on our test site. All right. So I have a question here from Michelle. Do we have to report unduplicated numbers of parents impacted by supplemental activities? For example, when we have an educational program for parents. Tara, perhaps you could provide us some insight on this one.
Yeah, so Michelle, for this question, are you looking at, when you're talking about unduplicated numbers, are you talking about supplemental activities that are being given to parents that are also getting an effective program if you're assuming you're a Tier 1 grantee? How are you defining unduplicated here, like unduplicated in what context? Because I think that the short answer is that if you're a Tier 1 grantee, and I'm kind of assuming you are, correct me if I'm wrong, then your supplemental activities might be given to adult participants or youth participants who might also be getting a program later on. So if you're defining duplication based on that, okay, so I'm reading your second one. Based on the information provided, we would have to create a section for these activities and report aggregate number of non-youth participants. Again, this is your supplemental program, not your primary effective program. I'm not 100%. I don't necessarily think that. Okay, so if you've got participants who are getting supplemental activities, but they're not getting the EBI, I don't necessarily think that you need to create a whole section just for them. I think you can just report the numbers. But maybe I'm missing something, and I'm happy to have this conversation offline with you so that we can talk very specifically about what you're doing and who you're serving with this supplemental activity versus who's getting your EBI. Because I'm kind of assuming that the youth are getting the primary effective program and that the parents might be getting the supplemental activity. So I feel like this is something that I could probably answer better offline. But it seems to me like if you're not talking about an effective program that you submitted evidence for, that we're not asking you to report a section with all of the information, just the numbers.
And I see this second part here where between different sections, that's perfectly fine. If it's the same parent and they're participating in this section and then this other section, that's fine because we're looking at who was in the section, who received that programming. If they were in sections 1, 2, and 3, because the first one happened and then the next one and then the next one, that's fine. You just report them as a participant in that section. Okay. Okay. So I will take note of, this is a specific question about a grantee that has both a Tier 1 and Tier 2 grant. So we will sort that out. Your account can have access to both grants at the same time. So you will see this example account doesn't have it. But here you'll just simply see your one grantee, and then your second grantee will be listed on another line beneath it. If there's any confusion about that, we could certainly talk to the project director and make sure that everyone who needs access to the website does have it. All right, I think we've wound through most of the questions here. If anyone has any final ones, or if we didn't catch yours, you can repost it at the bottom, and we'll try and answer that before we go. Great. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. Of course, if you do have any questions later that you think of and you want to ask us, you can certainly email the support team, and hopefully we'll be able to help you out. So, thank you everyone for attending this OAHPMdata.net demonstration.
Thanks, Zach. So remember that you can just contact data support if you have any additional questions. The slides will be available at max.gov in a couple of weeks. Just check in. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today.